So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and just here in Pickering, Ontario, and it's Saturday the 15th of December. So hope that everybody is having a great day or night, wherever you might be in the world. So just thought to do a short video for the internet here. So I thought we could start with a little bit of meditation. Maybe we could look about 3 feet in front of us and close our eyes. And we can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And we can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if we notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose or the face, can just let those relax. And when we're watching the breath at the tip of the nose, can be helpful to change perception of the breath so that it's not just air that one's pulling in and out of the lungs, but it's a kind of energy that's all around and coursing through one's body. And it's possible to pull it into and out of any part of the body one might like. And we can also sometimes imagine the breath as if it's kind of in front and we're watching it, but instead can change perception so that it's almost like we're right in the center of the breath. Almost like we were standing under a waterfall. So on the in-breath, one can be totally immersed by the breath. On the out-breath, one can be totally immersed by the breath. And we can try to make our mindfulness as continuous as possible, all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath changes into the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, and then as the out-breath changes again back into the in-breath. And before we finish meditating, you can spread thoughts of goodwill to all beings, wishing may all beings be happy and at ease, wherever they are, in every dimension, all the way to the ends of space and beyond. May all beings be happy and at ease. And we can open our eyes and do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. So hope that everybody is doing well today and having a great day wherever you might be. So it's been kind of nice week for me. Yesterday headed down to Toronto's underground pass system, which is this kind of a huge network of tunnels in the major buildings in downtown Toronto. And apparently it's the largest one in the world and spans more than 30 kilometers. So And I went down there with two friends of mine. One's a Buddhist who I've known for many years, and also another one is a Christian friend of mine who I met actually walking down on this path downtown there. And it was nice to kind of get out there with them. And so we had a bit of a kind of walk around, and this is probably one of the kind of wealthiest areas in Canada. And these banks are kind of the center of Toronto, and Toronto is also, there's many wonderful cities in Canada, but Toronto is the largest city in Canada, and these huge bank buildings are the center of them. And so underneath these bank buildings, they've created this kind of network of tunnels because Canada gets so cold, so the people go down there and walk. And, these banks have really kind of put themselves on showcase because they make all these walls out of marble, and sometimes there's kind of like marble floors. They have this kind of like a white marble in some places. They have kind of a gray marble in some places, and they have kind of a like black marble in some places. And they put these kind of incredible displays of lights and things in some of these kind of buildings that are kind of very beautiful, very well done. And it's kind of all this I guess this kind of these banks, they showcase their kind of wealth, down there. And down there, I've met a couple times. There's one fellow who every Friday he kind of gathers like bread, and he goes to these kind of very expensive stores down there, and gathers the kind of bread and whatever leftovers these stores have. So saw him a couple times, and this is another kind of Christian fellow, and so he gathers this and distributes it to these homeless people at night every Friday. And so it took my friends to meet him, and he has all these kind of really interesting stories about his time down on the path. And so this is a kind of interesting thing. On the one hand, of course, people are a real mix. Kind of. You can never know what's going on in their mind. But I had met with a friend of mine down there the other day, who I went to school with, and he was telling me, sometimes the business he's in can seem a bit cutthroat to him, and of course not that way every time. I'm sure there's very nice people as well working in the bank buildings, but business these days has this kind of reputation for being a little bit cutthroat. And then in contrast, there's also this kind of fellow on the path who collects this food from these vendors down there, these kind of very expensive stores, and they're happy to give to him. These kind of people down there are happy to give. And also, he said he collects some of last year's clothing from the people down there, and they're also happy, or maybe not down there, but different places in Toronto. These kind of good clothing stores give away their last year's models to him, and he distributes them to homeless people in different places. And so I've actually seen some homeless people who are really looked dressed well and looked to have some good shoes and these kind of things, and maybe because of his efforts that this has happened, and also the efforts of the stores who donate down there, the stores and the clothing stores who give to him. And so this is kind of something that makes people happy to see, regardless of where they are. It's kind of can be in this kind of a very opulent setting, this kind of amazing marble floors, excuse me, very beautiful kind of bank buildings that reach to hundreds of stories and overlook Lake Ontario, overlook all of Toronto. Can be stunning, and yet people walking there can feel very stressed out, kind of very unhappy, although working in these kind of beautiful buildings. Actually, one of my friends, he works in this very beautiful building called BCE Place, and this kind of has this amazing roof that's designed by this very famous architect. It looks very kind of ribbed, and they shoot all these movies, and yet can be working in a building like that, and also have a very high pressure job. And kind of be surrounded by these opulent settings, and then they eventually start to seem normal. My friend, I think, likes his job, but that's the way it is. And kind of walk on black marble floor every day, and first, whoa, black marble, didn't even know they had black marble, and eventually kind of the black marble walls and floors, they start to seem normal. Kind of every day you walk by the black marble and it's more black marble. Every day you walk by the black marble, it's more black marble. Kind of go to a very expensive restaurant that has different kinds of food and eat that food, and every day eventually that food starts to seem normal. And kind of our mind becomes accustomed to it. These things become kind of normal. So when I was we were walking down on this path as well, and we came across this kind of sign. And didn't know if I put a kind of photo of that on Facebook, but the sign says, at restaurant X upstairs, your every craving will be satisfied. So kind of at this restaurant, you, I guess, won't have any craving anymore, because they're able to totally satisfy whatever cravings a person might have. And so in Buddhism, this kind of thing is not really something that's possible. Kind of just the same way, walking on these black marble floors, walking through white marble hallways, seeing these kind of beautiful displays that are always changing. Eventually, these kind of displays become normal. And this is the kind of function of craving. It's kind of not possible to satisfy every craving that we have. even if somebody were there in front of us holding these various dishes. And kind of go imagine, I was trying to imagine what this kind of restaurant would be like. What kind of a place would satisfy every craving a person might have. And, I wondered as well if they would let me, if you went up there and asked to have a nap, if they would let you, and you said that was a craving. I'm really tired, like to have a nap right now. But anyways, even being in a restaurant like that, where in imagination they could serve every kind of food you might possibly want, eventually, those kind of foods, the taste of them becomes kind of dull. And kind of see this kind of whatever we eat one of it, two of it, three of it, eventually becomes normal. We kind of eat our favorite food every day, it becomes normal. Eat our favorite food 3 times a day, it starts to become disgusting. And if somebody were there kind of forcing us to eat food constantly, then it becomes painful. It becomes something that's actually directly unpleasant. And this is the kind of way that craving works. We become kind of accustomed to things, like the sensations that part of their appeal is that they're very new. And they also have, there is kind of genuinely nice things that may be ugly, but part of the difference is it is this kind of contrast. In other words, we didn't have this before, then we have it, our mind immediately reaches out to grab it, and it's very easy to kind of absorb into this thing. And to forget whatever else we were thinking about, just to be temporarily absorbed in the newness of looking at a black marble wall, the newness of eating this new dish at this restaurant, the newness of this view that's spectacular. But the newness of these things always wears off. It depends on this contrast. It depends on us not having something at one point and then having it. And then in having it, the actual act of having this thing and holding it actually decreases this kind of newness, decreases the ability of the mind to effortlessly become absorbed in this external sensual object. So in other words, there's this contrast. It's like when they talk about in Taoism, kind of these things kind of depend on each other. Our not having things, our enjoyment from having things depends on the suffering that we have from not having them. And kind of, this is kind of a paradox of sensual pleasures. It's hard to enjoy them unless we don't have them. The more we have them, the less we enjoy them. And so it's this way, you often notice as well, people kind of plan and hope for this retirement, are miserable, not miserable, but just looking forward to it, and then when they retire, they're kind of bored. Nothing to do, maybe wish that we're still working. And yet, every Friday when one finishes work, it's this kind of immediate relief. Kind of, whoa, the weekend's here, the weekend's great, And these things, of course, as well, they depend on this contrast. This contrast between working and not working. The weekend seems wonderful because one didn't have it. There was this work that one was doing, and one was planning, anticipating, looking forward to whatever kind of outing, whatever time with family and friends might happen on the weekend. And one had earned money to be able to do these things, and then finally one can go and do them. And so there's this contrast. When one finally finishes working, one immediately absorbs into whatever, sensual pleasure was trying to focus on. Immediately the TV, after a long week of hard work, sitting down to watch TV with a Sprite or whatever it is, seems really relaxing, Immediately kind of, the weekend, having the opportunity to, fall asleep and sleep for a really long time, it seems really great. But then when a person retires and does these things every day, they get to seem really boring, kind of even get to seem unpleasant, like I wish there was something else that I had to do. It kind of depends on this kind of contrast. So in other words, these things always, inherently, these external things are always something that can't satisfy. Their satisfaction in part depends on not having them. That's a kind of funny paradox to consider. So our wanting for them, wanting them, we get them, and immediately our pleasure from having them decreases. There's kind of this, in this way, these things get spun around. Kind of this way the Buddha says, these kind of worldly winds, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, status and loss of status are spinning around on each other. A person's desire for these things grows when they don't have them, and kind of anticipation of them. When they have them, they enjoy them for a bit, but in their actual enjoyment, people get into them too much, they can lose the very things that led them to have them. So this is, in this way, we can understand these kind of things are dependent, in part, on not having them. But there is this kind of other thing. This is the kind of happiness of consuming, the happiness of sensual pleasure, sending one's mind out to eat these things. But there's another type of happiness as well that actually builds. In other words, it doesn't start with this kind of rushing out to absorb. It starts small and builds up larger. And so this is the kind of happiness that we might see in the good deeds of this fellow down in the basement of the path, who would collect the food from these various kind of stores and distribute them to homeless people. You kind of might get, in the effort of going and doing that the very first time, might be a lot of effort and, distribute it, looking for the homeless people. And the first time you do it might not be, might get a little bit of happiness. But this kind of happiness, the happiness that comes from giving, the happiness that comes from thinking about what people want and passing it along to them, this is a type of happiness that, although it starts small, the more that one cultivates it, the more sensitive one's mind actually becomes to giving. And it's a happiness that starts low and then starts to build. And then that it lasts longer too. The more that one gives, the more that one tries to give a gift with a generous heart, the more that one tries to give a gift out of faith, traditionally in faith in the Buddha's enlightenment, that what the Buddha taught was good. The more that one tries to give a gift at the right time, trying to think, when does this person really need this gift? The more that one tries to give a gift respectfully, kind of not just kind of throwing it to people like they're an underling. Oh, you're homeless. Kind of giving that gift with both hands. The more that one tries to give a gift, not disrespecting oneself, not disrespecting other people, not denigrating oneself, not denigrating other people. In other words, don't kind of have, this fellow, one of the things we were talking, he's like, he used to be very wealthy, and he said, I wonder what I'd do if I got wealth again, because he lost his wealth and had a religious experience where he then decided to devote more of his time to charity. And he said, I wonder what I'd do if I had wealth again. He said, I think I might give it away, but I'd give it away judiciously, not just kind of throwing it away. So in other words, you wouldn't if you had, your week's pay, you wouldn't just throw it away. You wouldn't just give all of that away to say somebody who might spend it, who's, a drug addict. That person would take your money and spend it on drugs. In other words, we give, not denigrating ourselves or others. And the more we practice these kind of 5 qualities of giving, the more we try to become more refined at these 5 qualities of giving, the more our world starts to seem like a bright place. Kind of these external things. I mean, it's nice, not trying to knock, marble floors in the banks or anything like that. I mean, there's places where people have their wealth and they enjoy that wealth. It's not necessarily anything evil about that. It's just kind of this limit to it. Walking through these bank hallways becomes normal. And kind of, even if we have to do evil things, like if we do bad things in our jobs to get these external things, then our mind can become miserable. Even if we're walking in beautiful settings, things seem really dreary, But then on the other hand, if a person cultivates this aspect of giving, it's kind of something that builds up small, tries to become more refined in the ways they look for ways to give respectfully, give generously, give out of faith, give not denigrating oneself or others, give at the right time, try to give the gift at the really right moment when it'll be something good for somebody. This is a happiness that starts small and then keeps lasting longer, so that one's day, wherever one is, doesn't have to be in a marble building. One's mind becomes bright, and then one's surroundings seem bright, and one's surroundings seem like nice places to be. And this is just one type of way that we can cultivate this kind of inner happiness. There's actually more. There's also meditation. There's also morality, which is kind of a real foundation. You need that more than anything else. But But in terms of just learning to have this aspect of generosity, this aspect of giving in one's life, and it doesn't even take much. It doesn't have to be collecting many things from people all over, you know. It can be, you know, there's always people that one lives with. One can try to give to them, give to the situation one's in, wherever one lives, wherever one is residing. One tries to make that a better place. One tries to contribute in a way that will make people's lives wherever one goes better, make people's lives wherever one goes happier. You know? And when one does this, one gets happiness in return. This happiness starts small, but eventually even small acts of giving, even if a person sees a worm on the street and picks that worm up and throws it onto some grass where it will survive, that can give one's mind a lot of happiness. Just keeps building. So in other words, it's the opposite of this happiness that comes from consumption, where it starts off big and then grows smaller. The happiness that comes from something like giving starts off small and grows bigger. And so these are all potentials that we can cultivate in our practice. You know, our practice as meditators is actually bolstered by this attitude of giving. When we have this kind of bright mind, we sit down to focus our mind can focus more easily when it has these kind of heart qualities to it, this heart quality of generosity. And then we don't need necessarily to be in a place. I mean, it's nice to walk through marble halls, you know, you're not trying to knock that. I love, the pass system is great. It's a wonderful place to walk in the winter. Really happy to be, that they have it there to walk in. But the nice thing about this kind of inner quality, this quality of generosity, is that one doesn't necessarily need to be in a place where there's marble walls and marble bathrooms or anything like that to feel at ease. You know? Actually, the peace, the sense of ease that one gets from this kind of giving away, you know, learning to be generous to all the people we're around, all the beings we're around even, be generous and kind of harmless to them, wherever, that kind of happiness builds up so that our world becomes a bright place. So this is something that we can learn to cultivate in our meditation practice, and something that'll make our life good, you know, something that'll make our life meaningful, and something that'll make our life a happy one, you know. So that even though these kind of sensual pleasures come and go, even though a person can be like this gentleman I met downstairs who was once very wealthy, I think in finance, and making a lot of money, and then losing one's wealth, whether that kind of happens or not, this kind of aspect of brightness in the mind stays, so long as one maintains these inner qualities, so long as one maintains one's practice of generosity, giving wherever one goes, whatever situation one's in, right up to one's last breath, trying to make the people around oneself, trying to make the environment around oneself a better place. What do these people need? What can I give to them that will make them happy? And in this way, one has a good life, regardless, more or less, of one's external circumstances. And when it's time for one to pass away, one's mind is bright and likely goes to a happy place after that. So this is something that's good to do, this practice of generosity. Okay, so I think I'll leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great night or day, wherever one might be, and wishing you all the best till next time.